Well, hello there, and a very warm welcome to you on today's edition of the Open Door Show. My name's Ritchie Clapson from propertyCEO, and it's very good to have you here. What do we do on Open Door? Well, we talk about property. We often talk to the movers and shakers in the industry, have a bit of fun doing that, take a deep dive into the world of small-scale property development. But today, just me today, folks. You've got me. Do you know, I thought I would do a bit of a subject, a bit of a talk, and I would talk all about building a team. I keep getting asked about building a property development team. And how do I do that? Who would work for me? What sort of team do I need? How does that compare to if I've got a buy-to-let? I've done those. So here we go. Today's subject is all about building a property development team and getting into property as well, getting into property development. So I'm going to try and sort of cover those things off for you over the next 30 minutes. I'm going to do my best for that. So look, it's good to have you here. Let me start by talking about what sort of team you would need to refurbish or buy to let. Okay, let's start there, because I think a lot of people can get their head around it, whereas development people struggle with. And so I want to try and get this to a point today so you understand it. So from a buy-to-let point of view, what do you need? So you're going to do a buy-to-let. And even if you've never done a buy-to-let, I know we have a lot of landlords that listen to the Open Door Show, but even if you haven't, and if you're brand new to us or you're brand new to property and you've never done anything in property, you could probably get your heads around it. So imagine doing up your own home. So what would you do? So buy-to-let, your own home, whatever it might be. Well, what you would be doing, you'd be engaging with some industry professionals, wouldn't you? You'd probably be thinking, okay, right, I've got this home. It's a bit run down. Kitchens, bathrooms. Yeah, nearly always kitchens and bathrooms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a local plumber, and he or she probably fits bathrooms. I'm going to choose my bathroom. They're going to come in. They're going to rip out the old one. They're going to fit the new one. I'll arrange for them to come in Thursday a week. They do 2 or 3 days. No problem at all. Give them a set of keys. Let themselves in and out. Straightforward, yeah. What about a kitchen? Well, you might go to Magnets. Magnets have got kitchen fitters, put you in touch with a kitchen fitter. They come and supply the kitchen, they fit it, job done. Probably get a decorator in to sort stuff out there. So you get all the decorating done. Maybe you need a couple of new windows. Maybe you need the garden tidied. You would bring in individual trades. Not a lot to manage, I guess, in the scheme of it. Several individual trades doing small little bits of projects here and there. You know, you could easily spend 20, 30, 40,000 doing up a buy-to-let. But the team is just individuals that you pull together. It might be, if it was a major project, you employ a local builder and the local builder delivers the team. But not daunting, is it? Straightforward. I mean, if I said to you, you know, can you go and do an extension of that buy-to-let, put an extension on the back or completely refurbish it? You just adopt that same approach. It wouldn't be daunting, would it? It would be relatively straightforward. It's quite hands-on. You know, you'll be doing it evenings and weekends in between maybe your job or running another business. But what about development? Because I keep getting asked this. I've been asked this quite a bit recently. And so I thought, well, let's do an Open Door Show on this, because people are saying, yeah, I get that. I know if you're an existing student of ours, you listen to this, I know you totally know how to do this stuff, but I know there's a lot of brand new people to the channel here. Please like and subscribe what we do here if you can. Does help us. That are brand new and dipping their toe in the water to try and think, do I want to get involved in property or not? Or what about that big leap up? So let's talk about development. Let's talk about building a team to deliver a small scale development project, because it's a very, very different approach. And in lots of ways, it's easier, more complicated, but easier. Now, I know what you're thinking, Clapson, that doesn't make any sense at all. But it does. Let me explain. First of all, let me tell you what I'm going to call development. Okay, so development is not a doer-upper. It's not a flip. It's not buying the residential house and putting an extension on it. You know, that's your doer-upper. When I'm talking about development, for today's purposes, and generally when I describe development, I want you to think about repurposing, taking something and turning it into something else. So whether that is a commercial building and turning a commercial building into a residential building, or a number of residential buildings, perhaps one should say, or it could be land and turning land into new build. Okay, so you're changing the land into new build residential properties, or you're changing the commercial building into residential properties. So we are repurposing. We're changing the use of the building. So the works inevitably are going to be quite significant, quite fundamental. Would you agree? Yeah, there's going to be quite a lot to change a commercial building into something else. Clearly, change a bit of land into putting properties on it is all the infrastructure and everything else. Let's focus on the commercial buildings, turning them into residential, because that's where the biggest opportunity is. The opportunity right now out there, and not changed, I don't think, under a Labour government. Labour are in now, just got in. What are we seeing in the first few days? Not a lot, but they said they're going to, they're going to change the planning system. They're going to make sure that we can build all these homes. They're going to fundamentally wipe away all the old rules. I think a lot of that's to do with Greenbelt. I don't think that's going to be changing the rules on permitted development right, because in their manifesto, they said, they were really looking towards brownfield land, which is existing commercial buildings, to build out a lot of the houses that are needed, the 300,000 a year. So I think we're in safe hands. Now, assuming that, let's run with that. We're going to take these commercial buildings, and we're taking, let's take an old bank. Okay, let's take an old bank, an old empty bank, could be run down, but it's just not required now. In fact, not far up from where we are, where I am in my studio here in the South Coast, just outside of Winchester, a little town called Alresford. Okay, and happened to go up the other day. This is literally just popped in my head. I can't remember what branch it is. I think it could be a Lloyd's or something like that. Shut down. And the reason I remember it, because I used to go in there sometimes to get a bit of cash out. I think there's only 2 banks, I think, in the village. And if I'd gone that way, I would have popped in there, got some cash. Shut down, empty, for sale. So that bank building, now that one could be listed. It's in historic town, but let's assume it wasn't. Empty bank building, 3 stories, 4 stories high. I think it was, quite a substantial building in the high street, normally quite prominent buildings. Vacant. It's a little village, a little town. Who's going to want to rent that anytime soon? Well, probably no one. So we have an opportunity under permitted development rights. And if you're not aware of that, this is not what today's show's about. But if you're not aware of that, that means we can convert that bank, assuming it's not listed. There are ways around we can do that if it is listed, but let's just park that for today. Assuming it's not listed, it's relatively straightforward to turn it under permitted development right, class MA, straight into residential properties. And we can do that. We get our permission in 56 days. If we don't, we just carry on. We have a right given to us by central government to convert that into residential properties. Now, the exciting thing, of course, about that, and some of you will be aware of this, if you're not, it's huge uplift, because the price per square foot we pay per square foot, per square meter for the commercial building compared to residential is a lot lower. So when we can convert that to residential under the permitted development rights, we get a big uplift. Let alone doing it up, we get a big uplift. So we make big profits out of these, okay? 6-figure profits, 100, 2, 3, 400,000 pounds. Life-changing stuff. So we think about that bank. So just picture the bank, if you may, okay? That bank is going to need a fair bit of alteration. It's probably got a banking hall, right in the middle of it. So that banking hall needs to be chopped and changed. It could have a 2-story height. A lot of these have really big, nice, 2-story banking halls. Well, we don't want a 2-story flat. We're not a big double height space. We're going to probably put an additional floor in. It's going to have offices or configurations of meeting rooms and things that probably don't suit our residential layout. So we're going to have to alter those. We might have to move some structural walls. It's probably got an old bank vault in it. Now, there are ways we can convert banks and keep the bank vaults in, but let's assume for today's exercise, we got to take the bank vault out. Well, that's quite a bit of structural alterations. Let's assume we might have to put some additional windows in it in places. So you can see a lot more work compared to a residential property, just in altering the structure and the layout. Now, what about thinking about the services, the electrical supplies, the water supplies, maybe gas? What about waste away? The water pipes out, taking away the sewage and the waste from the sinks and the baths and so on. Well, pretty much none of that's going to exist in the bank, only for bank purposes. So all of that's got to be stripped out. If you're doing up a residential property, maybe the ring main, the basic gas supply, the plumbing's more or less in the right locations. In the bank, Nothing. Your banking hall is now going to be turned into a flat, and you're going to need some plumbing for kitchens and bathrooms and so on. Not only incoming services, but waste away. So you can see there is major works to be done in these buildings. And of course, what you need to do is understand how that's all going to be done and manage that process. And here's the thing. You're not going to be doing that in the same way, and nor could you do that in the same way that you've managed your buy-to-let. So on your buy-to-let, largely if you're putting an extension on or you're refurbishing, taking out a kitchen, you just get a kitchen fitter in. Here, we need some consultants. So right at the top of this, we need some consultants. We need probably a planning consultant who's going to put in the application to get that change of use in the 56 days that I talked about. So we need expertise to get that right. It's pretty straightforward, but you don't want to get it wrong. We need an architect to work with the planning consultant and draw up the layout of the flats to maximize the space. That's also going to suit what the estate agent said they can sell. So we need an architect, and we need expertise in that area. We need a structural engineer, clearly, because we're going to have a structural engineer to cope with the alterations, taking out maybe the bank vault, knocking some walls down, maybe putting some steel beams in. Yeah, so we need a expertise there from a structural engineer. We probably need a mechanical and electrical consultant to define where the services are going to run to service this in the most efficient, most cost-effective manner. And of course, all compliant with building regulations. And then, of course, to control all of that, we need probably a cost consultant. So to pull it all together, because there's lots of cost there. And suddenly, rather than maybe doing a buy-to-let spending 20, 30,000, we might be spending 200,000, 300,000 doing it up, 10 times the amount that we would. So, we can't afford to get that 10, 15, 20% wrong. 20% wrong on a £30,000 refurb, £6,000. Not going to kill us. We can find that money. If we actually went 20% wrong on a 300,000 contract, that's 60,000. A little bit more painful, would you agree? So we need a cost consultant. We need all those expertise to control the costs. And of course, then we need a project manager. We need a project manager to run it, because that's not our expertise. We can ask a local architect to turn up and draw us an extension on the back of our own home and get a local builder and a kitchen fitter and a plumber to do up our buy-to-let, sure. But now we've got a multitude of trades or professional people working. And of course, trades beneath that. We're going to have a lot more trades coming in and out. They've all got to be coordinated. Imagine if we get the plasterers turn up at the wrong time. They're not ready because the electricians haven't finished. This is a full-time job for someone. This is going to be a site manager under a contractor. But of course, the contractor has to be controlled. You can't have the contractor running away with the costs. If you've ever done up your buy-to-let or an extension on your own home or refurbish your own home, did you end up spending more than what you expected? You did, didn't you? So cost overrun is always going to be there unless you control it. Well, if we've got an industry qualified cost consultant controlling the costs with an industry qualified project manager controlling the program, working together, we've got a good chance of getting this delivered on time, to the right quality, and on budget, which is what we need, because we can't afford the overspend on these bigger projects. So you don't have time or the ability to control these people. You don't. Do you know about the right sort of contracts to put in place? No, you don't. Do you know about the processes, the Royal Institute of British Architectural processes that generally we follow in this industry? No, you probably don't. So how can you control them? How can you insist they're put in place? Well, of course, your project manager can. Your project manager can control these people. And so if we think about it, we've got to assemble a fairly sizable team. Now, you're not employing this team. And this is where a lot of people, they get confused. They go, well, how can have I got to take all these people on? No, you don't. You just use them as consultants. No different if you wanted to go to the dentist. I mean, I doubt anyone out there listening employs their own dentician. You don't have a private dentist on call, sat waiting in your spare room. You don't, do you? When you want something done with your teeth, you pop in, you go down, you book an appointment, you pay for a couple of hours of their time, extortionate rates, always, we know that. And you get your teeth repaired or cleaned or whatever you want done, and you go away. You pay them as a consultant. This is exactly the same way in the construction industry. It's exactly the same way. You don't have to employ the mechanical and electrical consultant, the architect, the structural engineer, the project manager, the cost consultant, the planning consultant, etc., or all the trades. You're just going to buy some of their hours in to run your project for you. And that's how they work with any client out there. And if we think about it, do we think that team could deliver? Because that team between them will have several hundred years of experience, just in that small group I've got there. Several hundred years of experience. And of course, you can't possibly begin to assemble that same experience. You know, if I've got an architect with 20 years experience and structural engineer with 30 years experience and so on, so there's no way you can get that experience. And it would be ludicrous, because by the same token, you're not going to think about building the brickwork, are you? If I said to you, look, to be a developer, what you've got to do is you've got to learn to be a bricklayer. You got to get your plastering skills up, and you need to know how to wire up a building and put electrical circuits in. You'd go, you're mad, Clapson. What are you talking about? I don't need to learn that stuff. Well, of course you don't. And the same token, you don't need, and nor should you be, a project manager. You're not going to be very good at it. You're not going to be a very good cost consultant, and so on. So this is a highly leveraged business model. And you're going to assemble a team with several hundred years of experience. Now, of course, you've got to pay for those. Even at consultants, there's a cost. A lot of people say, but that's a huge amount of cost. Of course it is. But there's a huge amount of uplift in value. This is where we go back to the model. When we look at a buy-to-let, the uplift that you're doing, the conversion that you're doing, is not really changing the value of that property. Even if you buy below market value, it's still a residential property that you paid residential prices for. And so you're here, and your uplift is just to here. Yes, you're putting a new kitchen, new bathroom, you're doing it up, and you refinance it. And if you refinance it, you might get back maybe, you know, the refurbishment costs. I doubt you get your deposit back. But here, when we're actually starting down here, and we're starting from a commercial building that per square foot, per square meter is a lot cheaper, our uplift is huge. So part of that uplift in value to residential, and we have the right, as I say, through permitted development rights, enables us to afford this team, because we couldn't do it otherwise. You know, if you couldn't afford the team, there's no way you can deliver this, because you don't understand architecture, you don't understand cost consulting, you don't understand project management, and you don't have the time. You don't have the time to do this. And even if you had the time, you don't want to spend the time doing this, because isn't the most important thing time? It is, isn't it? What you don't want is another job. So if anyone wants to get into property, and most people that listen to our channel are either in property or wanting to get into property, well, is that not only because you want to earn money, but the money to enable you to have time? Time for you, maybe your family, maybe your friends, your loved ones. It is, isn't it? So you don't want another job. So first of all, you don't want to spend the time. You do not have the ability, so you have to employ the team. And you can't employ this size team on a buy-to-let, because it's just the uplift isn't there. But you can on a commercial conversion. You can on converting a commercial building to residential, because we get the uplift in value. So all these things work in your favor. We then have that assembled team. Just picture it, you know, 6 or 7 people all running the project. And ultimately, the contractor, okay, there's going to be a main contractor, yeah, is going to be run by the project manager. So the project manager is going to control the contractor, and the contractor controls the subcontractors underneath them. So the plasterers, the plumbers, the electricians, and again, you know, it would be ludicrous, as I say, to suggest you're going to do that, are all going to be controlled by the contractor. So you haven't got to make sure, as you would in a buy-to-let or your home extension or a doer-upper, that the plasterer turns up on time, or run around and get the bathroom tiles in the back of your car because no one got them there. You don't have to do that stuff, because the contractor's controlling the subcontractors, making sure they come and go when they're supposed to. The project manager is controlling the contractor to make sure the contractor finishes the project on time, on budget, to the right standard. Your team are going to run and deliver the project for you. So what's your role? Well, your role is to run the project manager, is to run the business. That's all you've got to do. And you've got to use a set of skills. Organizational skills. Do you have those? Management skills. I'm guessing you do. What about decision-making skills? Can you make a decision when you're required to, given all the options? And what are you like with people? Can you interact? Can you engage? Have you got people skills? Because that's the skills you need to run a business. And that's all you're going to do here. You're going to sit as the manager overall. We call it the CEO, the property CEO. That's where you're going to sit, hence the name of the company. You're going to sit as the manager, and underneath you is going to be the project manager, manages the project. It's the title's on the tin. He or she does all the heavy lifting. You've just got to control the business overall. Now, you do need to understand and get educated on what they do, but actually, in lots of ways, I liken this to being a cabinet minister. Okay, this very topical at the moment, I understand, but actually, obviously, if you listen to this on record several months down the road, maybe not as topical, but right now, quite topical in terms of cabinets and who's in charge. But the point is, if you're a cabinet minister and you're in charge of defence, who runs the defence department? Civil servants. Yeah, civil servants are down there. They are like our industry professionals. And then what you're going to have yourself at the top as the cabinet minister, understanding how that department gets run. So you get educated to a certain degree about how that department runs, but you run it as a department. And it would be ludicrous to suggest that a cabinet minister comes in and has to know everything about defence, because 6 months later, 3 months later, 10 months later, who knows, they're over to education. Okay, they've got to get educated at a high level on how education department works, and then they have another bunch of civil servants. It's the team that delivers. It's the CEO, the manager, the cabinet minister that makes the decisions, overall organizes, overall manages, and has those people interactions and those skills. So in lots of ways, it's no different. So do you think you could assemble a team that would deliver a project for you? Well, the reality is you probably could. And of course, you need systems. And so the reality is there is systems. We have a process here. We have a process called the 8 pillars. It's basically the manual. And all you need to do is read the manual. So if you were going to open a Costa coffee shop, what would they give you? They'd give you a franchise manual, wouldn't they? And what you would do, you'd read that franchise manual front to back, evenings and weekends, probably fall asleep. But it would tell you chapter and verse how you run a Costa coffee shop. And you would assemble a team and they would run the coffee shop. You can't do everything. It's a team sport, isn't it? So in the same way, all you need is the small scale development manual. Okay. And there is an operations manual. It's called the 8 pillars. So there's an operations manual that we have here. And what do our students do? They read the manual. With our support and our guidance and our help, we steer them through that. So we're there to help them. But fundamentally, it's a manual. When you understand every process of development and you read the manual, the same as the cabinet minister understanding the cabinet department and how the civil servants work, he or she can then control that department, hopefully, without getting political. It's the same way. So when you understand the manual and you assemble the right team, and of course, the manual tells you the team that you have to assemble, and these are industry people. You're not creating up, you're not trying to create roles that don't exist. These people are just going to fall into it. So once you understand the manual, you can create the team. The team are very used to running the projects. And all you've got to do is run the business, which the team are delivering. And of course, I suppose the sort of final part to this that everyone always asks me, yeah, but who would want to work for me? Why would any consultant want to work for me? Well, why wouldn't they? Because there's a mindset shift here of who's buying and who's selling. Well, think about it. It's the actual consultant that is selling. The actual consultant, that architect out there, she is looking for a new client every day of the week, every week. My background is I'm a chartered structural engineer. I used to run a structural engineering consultancy. I would always be on the lookout for new clients, new developers of any scale to fit wherever into my business, into my various departments. And so if you're a developer, you're a client. So an architect out there. So if you're a developer, even if you've never developed, and an architect's out there, they're looking for you. They're going to sell to you. You don't have to sell to them. The question of have you done development or not is almost irrelevant. No, I'm a business person. I'm transitioning into this and I'm going to set up a team. Would you like to be on my team? Tell me what you've done. And they will do that. I often use the analogy just to make sure you understand of how this works. If you went in to buy a new car, okay, you don't go in and sell yourself to the salesman, do you? You don't. What happens? You want to go and buy a new. So let's actually think of this. So let's assume you went into Mercedes and you're going to buy yourself a new Mercedes. Okay, you're going to treat yourself. Here we go. You don't go in there and they come over and say, oh, can I help you? You don't go, yeah, look, okay, yeah, I want to buy a new Mercedes. Look, I can drive. I've got all my own limbs and everything. If you want, I could read a number plate over there at, was it 30 feet or something? I can read that number plate. Look, I can read that out. Actually, no problems at all. I can cover one eye and the other. I can do that. Here's my driver license. Look, there's no points. I've done you a license check and everything. I've got insurance and I've actually got all the money. I've got my bank statements printed out. Here they are. You can have a look at them. I can afford it. Be mad, wouldn't it? It'd be mad. Almost quite funny to do. What happens? What happens when you go into a car showroom? You're going to go into Mercedes. They sell to you. Hello there. How can I help you? Yeah, I'm looking for, I'm thinking about an estate car. Okay. What sort of estate car would you need? What sort of budget have you got? Are you looking for performance or are you looking for economy? Are you looking for electric? You're looking for diesel? Are you looking for petrol? You're looking for this? Do you want a sunroof? Do you want leather? Isn't it? Not once. Not once do they say, can I see your driver license and do I know whether you've got the cash or not? Could you read that number plate? Because they're selling. And that analogy hopefully gets you in the mindset. Ultimately, why would anyone want to work for you? Because they're selling and you're buying. They're looking for clients all the time. So actually, it's relatively easy to go out there and build yourself a team because those people are looking for you. And provided you engage with them in the right way, providing you pitch yourself in the right way, provided you look credible, provided you have a brand behind you, all the things that the manual, the 8 pillars, tell you. So provided you did what I told you to do, you would build a team. You could build a team. In which case, if you can build a team with those industry professionals, they can deliver the project. They have all the expertise, all the knowledge, all the contacts to actually deliver a project for you. And the reality, all you've got to do is find one. Imagine if all you'd have found was the project manager. And you say, I still got to find an architect, a structural engineer, mechanical, electrical consultant, and so on. Do you think if you ask the project manager, do you know any architects? Yeah, 2 or 3. Do you know any structural engineers? Yeah, 3 or 4. And so on. They're going to introduce you to their network, their people. A recommendation is even better than a cold call. So you can build this team. And all the while you've built this team, you have all the expertise, several hundred years of expertise, all professionally qualified, have done this several times. They can now deliver the project. What do? You just run the business. It's part-time. So actually, I'm pretty certain that you'll find if you ever go and do this and you have done a buy-to-let, there's less work in running a project that will yield you 2, 3, maybe 400,000 profit for you personally than there is doing up a buy-to-let that will yield you £300-400 a month after you paid all your bills. What would you rather do? It's a no-brainer, isn't it? So there we are. Look, I just thought that might be useful. Hopefully that is useful. If it is, give us some comments. Let us know. If there's any other topics you want me to discuss, sometimes I just go on here and I just do an open door on my own because I get these messages across. And it was the team one that kept coming up time and time again when I've been out talking to people. So I thought, well, I'll address that today. But you can build a property development team. It's straightforward. Get the manual, understand the process. If you want to do it, I'll help you do it. And go and deliver some decent projects. Start earning yourself 6-figure sums and have time on your hands. But if there's another subject you'd like to know, then please let us know, and I'm happy to cover that off. Now, if you are interested in a bit of free training, okay, please copy this down. Grab a pen and paper. I'm going to give you a link so you can copy this down. It's called the 6-Figure Roadmap, okay? And if you are interested, just copy this link down, propertyceo.co.uk/SFR. So link onto that, and that will give you a bit of free training. Come and join me on that, and we can talk to you a little bit further how you could get involved in property development. So there we are. Thank you for joining me on today's edition of Open Door. Hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully you found it useful. Hopefully I've educated you in some way. As I say, please like and subscribe, and then you'll get copies or notified when future editions of Open Door come out. And it's not just me that does them. A number of my colleagues here do them, so you don't have to listen to me every time. So there's an advantage as well. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all again soon. Cheers now. Bye-bye.